Hello everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Everybody, Cantonese Cat here. I think I should talk about China. There's a reason why I want to talk about China is because a lot of people are really wondering whether or not the market's gonna just keep dropping a lot lower from here on out. Even though I think it's just normal market volatility for the US stock market and for cryptocurrencies, I'm starting to see a lot of people saying, like bad things about how Bitcoin's going to crash down further. I mean, there's always a possibility how the US stock market is going to crash down further. There's always a possibility. And somebody, I was just reading one of the comments basically just saying like the Chinese credit spread is not looking favorable. It's basically looking like there's not enough liquidity that's going to be in the system. So I just want to point out one thing here. This is the Hang Seng Index Fund, which is the Hong Kong index. Basically, pretty much most of the major Chinese stocks are going to be in this index fund. And what you're really seeing here is I'm starting to see a little bit of a trend change, possibly from a very, very bearish few years to now really looking more positive. So I'm starting to see some signs that it may have a pretty good bottom and potentially a pretty strong run up for like the next 12 to 18 months or so. I just want to talk about it before everybody else talks about it. I'm going to show you the rationale as to why I think that is. And I'm not saying that Chinese stocks are a good thing to get invested in. I'm personally currently not invested in Chinese stock. If there's anything that I have Chinese exposure to, is going to be Tesla and Apple. And that's good enough for me. I don't really need any additional Chinese exposure. But if you're into a trade, I think there's potentially opportunity here. Not that in any of these is financial advice, but I just want to point out this is the Hang Seng Index Fund. These are monthly candle, and the RSI is underneath below. There's something that's very interesting that has happened, which is basically that it has broken through this, really talking about like a 7-year RSI bear market trend line. It has finally broken through of that, which is, I think, it's a pretty significant thing to have noticed. The other thing that I really saw that really has struck me is that if I look at, and one of my favorite indicators, the 20-month moving average, which comes to the Bollinger Band. If you pull up the Bollinger Band, you look at the 20-month moving average, is going to be like the basis curve right over here, the orange curve over here. You really can tell that this really does set the trend. Whenever it slopes up is usually a pretty strong uptrend. Whenever it slopes down is a pretty strong downtrend, right? And usually it can serve as either support that push price up higher, or it could serve as resistance that push price down lower, right? And what you're really seeing here is currently something interesting is happening. Initially, when everybody kind of got a little bit excited over here around January 2023, even myself included, I was a little bit excited, but it just couldn't break through and it couldn't change the trend because the 20-month moving average is so negative sloping. So rejection, and then finally something interesting has happened because the 20-month has been doing absolutely nothing over here. You're finally seeing a little bit of a trend change here where instead of just sloping negative just like that, it's really starting to flatten out. So this really gives us a much better chance to really break above and see whether or not we can do a little bit of a trend change here. And it does look a little bit like an Adam and Eve type pattern, right? Generally, this is how Adam and Eve patterns work. You have an atom over here, and you think it's going to break out, but with a V-shaped recovery, but no, because there's some longer-term technicals, they're still not allowing that to happen, and slapping price back down, and it had to form another Eve for it to kind of smoothen out the 20-month moving average before price could potentially even have a chance to go higher, right? But I do think that there are some couple of pretty interesting. One is the RSI trendline breakdown. The other one is the flattening of the 20-month moving average, although I do like to see it flip the 20-month from resistance to support. But I'm seeing some pretty positive sign here. Another positive sign is the Ichimoku cloud. The blue line has served as resistance. Over here, it looking like it was potentially going to serve as like support here, but it just couldn't because the Kijun up here is still serving as resistance, which is now pushing price back down lower. Currently, we're kind of range bound between the Tenkan and the Kijun, but it's an important step for it to reclaim the Tenkan from resistance to support. I think this is a very, very important step for price to happen. And now that the Tenkan is not that far away from the Kijun, I think there's a little bit better chance for the Hang Seng to actually flip from being in a downtrend to maybe more of a flattened trend, maybe into an uptrend. It has been taking long enough for it to do that. I think it's showing some signs that it could be bottoming, and if it does end up flipping a lot of these things from resistance to support, like what is shown right here, and also if it's able to flip the 20-month from resistance to support, I think that good things could happen over the next year and a half or so. Now, if you look at a lower time frame, it's also looking very interesting. Right now, we're not quite at a breakout. I'll show you what I meant by that. On the weekly chart, it really does tell you a very clear picture. It broke back inside a weekly cloud. It's just been riding underneath the inside the cloud over here, and it's found support at the bottom of the cloud. Right now, it's trying to challenge the top of the cloud, but it's just simply at resistance. It doesn't have enough juice to kind of break through above. I can totally see it probably coming back down here a little bit further, and trying to backtest some of this stuff here before breaking out again. But currently, it's still at resistance on a lower time frame, so we're not quite ready yet. Even on the Super Ichi, you have a little bit of bearish crossover here, and it's still kind of underneath resistance here too, right? So it looks like once they break about, it just doesn't have enough juice to break through quite just yet. So it's probably going to do a range bound here for maybe another couple of months or so before things really start to look more bullish. But I just want to show a couple other indicators here too. The super trend, if I can pull up the super trend here, has turned positive. It's been negative for like months now. Actually, it's been negative for like a whole year and more. It's finally flipped positive. It found support down here at the super trend. So there are some pretty interesting findings here that does tell me I think we might be entering a very nice bottoming process, and that it would bottom enough, and that I think the Chinese liquidity is, there might be enough Chinese liquidity staying in the Chinese stock market for things to actually look a little bit more bullish for it moving forward, right? Just looking at the lower time frame, it's basically, this is like a higher low, higher high, higher low, right? And we'll see how far this goes. I would like to see it eventually form another higher high to really confirm the bull trend. But so far there are some pretty positive findings. I don't think it's going to break above immediately. I do think it's probably going to end up ranging sideways for another couple of months at least before going up. But I just want to let you know that I am seeing, and over the next 12 to 18 months, I'm getting a little bit more bullish on the Chinese stock market. I'm going to go for a little bit more in the individual stocks because I do have some quick requests for Chinese stocks here. Just going to go to KWEB here immediately. It actually doesn't look as bullish as the Hang Seng, because I think the big reason is because PDD, Pinduoduo, really had a very bearish week, and that really dragged out the whole KWEB, which is the internet ETF, which is very heavily weighted with Pinduoduo. It really dragged it down. So initially it looks like it was going to challenge Ichimoku cloud, but it just ended up falling underneath the cloud here on the weekly. But on the monthly, it's basically showing the same thing, where the 20-month moving average is turning flatter and flatter. I still think maybe another couple of months or maybe a few months to kind of break back above and potentially set off a bull trend potentially moving forward. I think this basing behavior here is looking more like nicer and nicer, and I think that maybe a couple more months, maybe a few more months, it's going to end up flipping bullish here, just based on looking at these indicators. KWEB, it's underneath the Tenkan Kishin, unfortunately. I mean, Pinduoduo really does mess this index up here, unfortunately. But one stock that everybody's talking about for like the last 5 years, but you really have a lot of people really just stop talking about it. And now it might be actually a good idea to start talking about it, because I really do think this Adam and Eve pattern is really playing out, which is a generally pretty decent bottoming process. And I do think the 20-month moving average is turning flat enough for us to potentially reclaim that over the next couple of months or so. And then you might end up having a pretty decent year and a half or so of price action. This really does look like a very nice reversal pattern. The 20-month moving average is still resistance, obviously, but it looks like it's having a much better chance to kind of break above, because it's looking like it's finally a little bit more positive sloping, right? So I am getting a little bit more bullish on Alibaba, although I'm not buying Alibaba. But another thing is it's also reclaiming the Tenkan over here as potentially as support, right? So all of these are some pretty positive signs here on the higher time frame. On the lower time frame, it is also looking like it's stuck in the cloud. It's basically looking just like the Hang Seng, but it's really trying. And I do think that this Adam Eve bottom pattern, it looks like it probably will work out. based on what I'm seeing. And also just looking at the super trend is turned positive on the weekly. Looking at the, let me see if I can put the bull market support band here. If I put the bull market support band here, it really does look like it's curving up now. So I do think that this Adam Eve bottom here is looking more and more probable that it's going to end up working out. Couple other stock that I find to be relatively bullish for China's market. One is Tencent. Ticker symbol is TCEHY, which is an over-the-counter stock. This really does look like an Adam and Eve bottom. It really looks like it wants to break out and just having a hard time doing it so far. But this is one of the more bullish stock that I can see in the Chinese market. Now, a lot of people are paying attention to Pinduoduo PDD. I do think that it's still on an up channel, but I'm not sure if it's necessarily bottom yet. I generally, for things to bottom, I would really like to see a more of a better wick. And this capitulation candle is just on like huge volume, which is concerning. I don't know where it's going to end. Maybe it's going to end at the bottom of this volume shelf around like 85. I think that's possible. Maybe it's going to end up hitting the bottom of the channel here eventually, right? If it hits the bottom of the channel, it's going to get to like 80. But if it ends up just kind of going sideways and hit the bottom of the channel eventually, then it could end up hitting like 85. Overall, I still think that this is still a relatively bullish chart compared to the rest of the Chinese stock. I'm going to show you that in a sec. But there are some concerns. For example, if I go back to the monthly, initially you have a very nice up curling 20-month moving average, but this month's candle really has kind of destroyed this market structure. It had really flipped the 20-month moving average from up curling to like really flat, right? So that's a little bit concerning. There's a potential for this to go down, and it can backtest and get rejected, and then next thing you know, you have a downtrend, right? But it depends on what the next month does. I don't think this month's going to close back above. I do worry it's trying to go down a little bit further, just because so far there's not really a whole lot of wick underneath of it. So it favors some bearish continuation here. There is some fundamental change, I think, based on earnings on Pinduoduo that does get me a little bit worried. So I've been saying, even though it looks like a bullish chart, I won't enter Pinduoduo because there are some fundamental things that I'm maybe a little bit worried about. But that's unfortunately, it's dragging down KWEB, it's dragging down the Chinese internet sector. There are a couple other stocks that I would not buy. One is BIDU. I was asking about BIDU. Look at how far it is away from the 20-month moving average. It looks like it wants to continue to track the 20-month moving average down. Even if the price ends up bouncing, I think it's going to end up getting rejected at whatever the 20-month moving average is going to be. So you could potentially get like a 20% gain, I suppose is possible, but you're probably going to end up getting rejected, right? So if you enter BIDU, maybe it's more of for a trade rather than for an investment. But I'm not a financial advisor, of course, right? But I just don't like the fact that Bollinger Band continues to expand to the downside, and the 20-month moving average is still crawling down. That's still a falling knife. It does have an Adam and Eve bottom look to it, but instead of like a Eve kind of bottoming, it looks like it's like kind of accelerating to the downside. So I'm a little bit worried about BIDU. I probably wouldn't buy into it. JD, it looks a little bit better, but still, right? You have a very negative sloping 20-month moving average. I think that's going to serve as resistance unless the price just kind of goes sideways here for another half a year. That could potentially help repair this. But I don't think JD is ready. I don't think JD is going to bounce up that high. I think if anything, it's probably going to get rejected anywhere, thing like above 30. I don't think it's going to get back above, right? A little bit more concerning with JD. I probably wouldn't enter BIDU or JD. FUTU looks better. FUTU is kind of like a Chinese equivalent or Asia equivalent to Robinhood. And a lot of people in Asia, including Singapore and other regions, they use FUTU to trade on their phone with a lot of U.S. stocks. So the U.S. stock market ends up heating up again. FUTU can end up doing pretty well, and I think it's possible. So far, it looks like it's just a channeling up kind of thing, right? So I am still relatively bullish on FUTU, although I am not wanting to really get into it because there's so many other opportunities in the market. But FUTU looks like if I was going to enter a Chinese stock, I think FUTU might be one of those that I might be interested in, just based on the technical, based on how nice the 20-month moving average has flipped positive, and based on how nice it's been testing and support on the way up. And also just looking at the monthly Ichimoku, it's kind of stuck in a range here, but had a bullish cross. I think once this correction happened, it's finished, you're going to try to challenge this cloud over here again around the 70s, and we'll see. Maybe it takes another half a year to a year to kind of really trying to break back above. But overall, this is still like higher lows and higher highs for the most part. I like FUTU. A couple of Chinese stock that I would probably not want to enter. One is NEO, and I've been really warning against NEO for months now. I don't like this look of falling knife, and there's like very strongly something 20-month moving average, and the Bollinger Band continue to expand to the downside. I don't know where the bottom is. And if you think that is a bottom, it always surprises you. Like here it looks like a hammer bottom, right? Here it looks like hammer bottom. Here it looks like hammer bottoms, right? And it's still end up just keep going down a lot further. This is how trend is your friend or the enemy, depending on how you look at it. I would not, enter NEO because I just don't know. Like if it ends up making like a 50% or like 80% up, you still getting rejected and probably need at least like a year for it to really bottom, to go up higher. And I don't know whether or not it's happening in 2025. So I probably won't enter NEO. I think if you're interested in NEO, you enjoy the fundamentals. Just looking at the technicals, I think that the basing behavior, if it ends up forming a base, probably going to take quite a long time. So I won't enter NEO. XPEV or Xpeng Xiaopeng looks a little bit better. 20-month moving average is flattening, but again, I still think it's still a little bit of a falling knife. Bollinger Band's expanding to the downside, and you're going to have a lot of resistance here around like $11, I think. So if price end up making a strong move, the rest of the Chinese market goes up, it could go up, but it probably end up getting rejected around 10 or 11, and it could go down again. And it might need some longer time, at least like 6 to 12 months to really finish up a basing behavior before any potential uptrend for Xiaopeng or Xpeng or XPEV, so those are just some quick thoughts on the Chinese market. Anyway, the overall theme though is there are really a couple of things I want to talk about. One is I think that the Chinese market is starting to form some basing behavior, although I think it's probably going to be at least a couple of months for it to really form a good base before going up higher over the next 12 to 18 months. It's still basing, it's still under resistance, and it's still trying to break out. But it looks like it looks better than it did before, right? Second, I think Baba doesn't look bad. Tencent doesn't look bad. FUTU doesn't look bad. Pinduoduo is starting to look bad. BIDU and JD and NEO and XPeng, I probably won't enter any of these. Anyway, with that said, I do think that if Hang Seng is forming basic behavior, it could be beneficial for Bitcoin and could be beneficial for the US stock market as well. So we'll see what happens. I'll keep monitoring the Chinese stock market. But anyways, just wanted to do a quick video to kind of update you. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye.